This is a discussion this afternoon of the coronavirus alerts that the Mcilvaine company generates on a daily basis. And when there's a range of subjects that we're covering, what I'd like to do, and this is Bob Mcilvaine, president of the Mcilvaine company, is just to review the alerts over the last couple of weeks as they relate to a nanofiber membrane material for mass and general membrane material for mass, as opposed to the melt-blown media. And there's a couple reasons that this could be very important. Number one, the nanofiber and other membrane designs are more efficient than the melt-blowns and can remove more of the viruses and therefore be more effective in the mass. Secondly, they have lower pressure drop and therefore will be more comfortable and can be worn for longer periods of time. And the last reason is, of course, that the melt blown capacity that is presently available worldwide is not sufficient to make the number of masks that are needed. We're forecasting not only are we forecasting, China's just announced that they expect to step up to 300 million masks a day, because every Chinese citizen who's traveling outside his house is going to be wearing one. So there's going to be a huge need for masks, and it's going to be quite a while before the melt-blown capacity can be expanded. On the other hand, these other media are already being used in air filters and are pretty widely available. So scaling up to use the nanofiber media is something that can be done pretty quickly. So this is our coronavirus daily alerts, and we're going to start with the 14th and then work backwards here. So clicking on the 14th, you can see that Cummins and Dupont are working together to address the current shortage. And Cummins already has a NanoNet nanoforce media, which uses the DuPont's hybrid membrane technology, and it's being used in air, fuel, and lube filtration products. So it's not a big stretch to have it apply to the mass, and in fact, it has lots of advantages. And here you can see the construction with the sandwich here with the nanofiber, nylon nanofiber, as a inner layer here with more comfortable layers against the skin and so forth. So the advantages of it again are both the lower pressure drop and the higher efficiency. And you've got two big companies like DuPont and Cummins moving forward. And so we would certainly think that there's all sorts of opportunities for large production of that particular membrane media. The Army was looking for face mask media that was more comfortable and did have the high efficiency than what that they had been using. And so they selected a pressure drop below 5 millimeters and did a survey and uncovered potential supply from all these different suppliers, all these different companies here, and DuPont and so forth that we've and Cummins that we've just been talking about, but many other companies as well. And so people like Lidl and H&V and so forth do have these other media that can be used in addition to this media that they have been supplying for the face masks. So I think this is an interesting list of companies, and shows a great depth in terms of the potential media that can be available. And let me stress again that if you can get a comfortable mask media that people will be wearing all day long and protect them, it is a huge step towards eliminating the limitation to sheltering and lock-ins and so forth, and so we're can be back and get the economy running again. But I do want to mention one other thing too, relative to the mass, is that social distancing uh, is not a panacea, and in fact, as you can see in this video depiction here, that the virus can be pictured as a cloud, and the cloud is moving basically in the air. So if individuals are moving at a high speed or even a low speed, even walking in a voting line, the person behind is going to walk right into the virus crowd of the person ahead of him if he's 6 feet ahead of him. So unless you're stationary, the 6 feet doesn't mean a whole lot. And in fact, for runners looking at the slipstream, if you got pardon me, for bicyclers, you can be going 20 miles an hour on a bicycle, and somebody a fairly long distance behind you is going to be right up in your virus cloud, and a cloud in a very short length of time. So these are all very important concepts, and particularly emphasize the need for these better masks. So let's move on now to the April 13th webinar. Again, these are coming out on a daily basis. Moving down through the fact that the decontamination and some of these other things that do make the melt-blown media massive available for reuse. But again, these nanofiber masks can be washed, so that makes for less awkward decontamination and reuse. So Big Nano has a process for nanofiber production, and so that is another opportunity here. And then Fibertex nonwovens has a new HEPA filter media for filters and respirators. And so this is a substantial company, and they do have a substantial capability for an efficient and low pressure loss media. Let's move on now to the April 10th. Skip some of these others here. Obviously, this was a weekend. That's why we didn't have anything on the 11th or the 12th. And we'll skip to the 10th. And you can see that that there is a nanofiber membrane mass status that we can look at on the April 10th. So the production shortages cited by INDA that I mentioned before for the meltblowns do create a problem, but not if we're using the nanofiber membranes. One thing just to note as we go by here is that masks have been fashionable for centuries, and after the Spanish flu, they were adopted pretty universally in China as a symbol of caring for others and social concerns and so forth there. But then moving on to the nanofiber membranes mass status in China, that Zowie filtration has this membrane material, this nano coating material that replaces the melt blown cloth, and they have a present capacity of what it really amounts to a million masks per day using the filter media that they have produced. But since it can be used 10 times, it's the equivalent here, as you can see, of 15 million masks per day. So this is just one small Chinese company with this new media, but the equivalent really of 15 million masks per day. And I won't get into some of these other details, but in terms of the melt blowns, we've got continuing information in the alerts on the large increase in melt blown production and mass production in China. And so this happens to be a few of them right here, but I won't go into those details. But it is of high note interest and worth noting that the Chinese mass production has gone up by orders of magnitudes and keeps going up. So we'll move on now to some of the earlier alerts. Nothing too striking to get into relative to the nanofiber mass in not, ones on the 9th and the 8th. But let's move down to the 6th. And relative to the 6th, I think it's worthwhile keeping score on the production of mass, certainly here. And as we go along here too, I'd like to mention that the whole concept of the future. Here is a Vogue mask, which opened its first retail store in China in 2013, and they sell an upscale mask, with the valve that is washable, and it is obviously fashionable. It's like a Nike store where you can get 28 different designs of these masks. It's expensive, but you get 28 wearings at least. So a $33 mask certainly costs you less than $1.50 a wearing. And if you wear it a lot longer, of course, it would be much lower. Uh, and here is another a mask producer that is making nanofiber type masks with cotton backing and is generating large production of that, and is expanding its production on a substantial basis. The moving on then to the April 4th, the Purafil has a antimicrobial fiber that they're targeting mainly for filters, but it also can be used in masks. So that's something else to consider as well. And then the last one we really want to look at is in the April 3rd, where we had some of the world's top experts in masks, and basically it was two sides. One, if you're using the melt blowns and need to use some method of decontamination that doesn't involve washing, then there's H2O2 and there's all and UV and other ways to do it. And so a lot of our this discussion was on that subject. But we also had with us Wallace Leung, who is from Polytechnic University in Hong Kong, and he's been doing extensive research on nanofibers for face masks, and he says that reusable face masks using nanofibers have high efficiency and can be manufactured at relatively low cost. So this is I think it's a significant uh, fact that we do have all this capability around the world. Um, And here's Wallace Leung, and then here are some of the other experts. Here's Christine Sun of Waterloo Filtration. Next week, she's going to be heading up a mask and filter webinar. I'm going to be one of the presenters on it, and there will be lots of people from around the world that will be involved in that. Here are several of the other panelists that were involved in the decontamination as well. And then one just last point here with one of the people wearing these Vogue masks, which I think is the high end of what we're talking about. But I think the bottom line all the way around is this is going to be a very significant development for mitigation of coronavirus. You're going to have masks that will be efficient. You can have people, if people use the masks with the valves, they will be potentially contaminating other people. But when they breathe out, there's no discomfort. On the other hand, with this very efficient medium, they don't have a risk of capturing of having being contaminated and becoming sick. So that the combination really of people who are at risk wearing these masks with the valves and being comfortable and being able to wear them at all times, it is, I think, a good part of the equation to make sure that we can have an economy that gets back to full production without essentially risking those people who are vulnerable. So thanks for spending a little time on the alerts this afternoon. Keep in mind that the alerts are coming out each day, and we will be continuing to review the developments for the nanofiber masks.